I'm joined from Westminster by UK Shadow Chancellor George Osborne. Mr. Osborne, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. Now, first of all, you said yesterday that instead of imposing the super tax, you would pretty much scrap bonuses altogether. How would you do that?
Well, I've made it clear to the banking sector that we want a successful, strong banking sector, but after everything that's happened in the last year, given the enormous amount of taxpayer support that exists, not just in direct capital injections, but in terms of interbank guarantees and liquidity support, that this is not the time to pay cash bonuses of a significant size, and that if you're going to reward effort, then that should come in new share capital, which can support new lending. So that's been our approach, and I think everyone would have been well advised to take it.
Sir, how would you, for example, cut the deficit here in the UK? What would you go after exactly if you were in power?
Well, the first point I make is that I agree with the Governor of the Bank of England that we need to eliminate a large part of the structural deficit in the UK in the next Parliament, and that is our policy too. So monetary policy and fiscal policy would be in coordination should we win the election. How we go about it, well, we've set out some specific measures already, more so than is traditional for an opposition, and I could go through those in detail if you'd like, but the key point I'd make is we've got to get moving on this. Britain has the largest budget deficit of any G20 or OECD economy, and we have got to show that we can get on top of our debts. We've got to show there's a credible plan that commands the confidence of international investors.
Are you worried about a debt downgrade for the UK?
Oh, well, I'm certainly worried that we risk our credit rating unless we have a credible plan. Now, the good news, I would hope, is that there's going to be a change of government in the next few months, that we are going to put forward a credible plan that will reassure investors and reassure the credit rating agencies. But, of course, the consequences for the UK of a downgrade would be that the cost of borrowing would increase, one would assume, and interest rates will be higher, and that's what you don't want in a recovery. What you want to do is keep monetary policy as loose as possible, in other words, interest rates as low as possible for as long as possible, and that requires credible fiscal policy.
Would you, sir, also put extra liquidity on the markets? I mean, it's difficult times, of course, because you have this huge budget deficit which is set to increase, but at the same time, governments across the world are saying it's just too early to pull this stimulus out of the economy.
Well, I think the key thing here is the monetary stimulus. In other words, keeping interest rates as low as possible for as long as possible. And looking back, certainly in the UK context over the last year, it's been the monetary policy stimulus which has been, if anything's been effective, the most effective. And that's what we want to maintain. Now, that means having a credible plan to deal with the fiscal deficit. And all the business organisations in Britain, a lot of the international observers of the British economy agree that fiscal sustainability and recovery go hand in hand. They're not opposites, they are two sides of the same coin.
Sir, how concerned are you about the level of the pound currently?
Well, we don't have a sterling policy as an opposition, so we believe in a free-floating exchange rate. Although I remember, actually, Gordon Brown, when he was doing my job, said that a weak pound is a reflection of a weak government and a weak economy. So people will read into that what they will. I would just make the point that my objective, should I become the Chancellor and the Conservatives form the government, is to have that credible plan to deal with the deficit, to protect our credit rating, to keep interest rates as low as possible for as long as possible, and to deal with that primarily by reducing and controlling public expenditure.
Sir, I also wanted to get a comment on you from what we heard from Mr. Soros, the billionaire investor, yesterday, saying that there's a kind of scheme to actually bring the City of London to its knees by France and some of the other European neighbours. What do you say to that? Well,
actually, I saw George Soros myself a couple of days ago, and and I know him reasonably well, and he made this point to me. I've spoken to Michel Barnier, the new European Commissioner in this area, and the point I would make is this: there has to be cooperation at a European level, just as there has to be cooperation at an international level when it comes to banking supervision. But I'm absolutely clear that London should remain the undisputed centre of wholesale finances, and that's what we will do.
All right. Thank you so much, George Osborne.